Snow pounded against the windshield as Ryan drove through the storm, the world outside frozen and silent, until a sudden movement caught his eye. A dog stumbled into the headlights, crying desperately, her body trembling with exhaustion. Ryan slammed the brakes, stepping out into the biting cold. "Hey, it's okay," he called, but the stray didn't run. Instead, she whined, looked at him, then turned toward the dark woods, crying louder this time. Something in her eyes begged him to follow. Heart racing, Ryan pushed through the snow after her, and what he found stopped him cold. Beneath a tree, half buried in ice, lay a tiny puppy, barely breathing. The mother nudged it weakly, her eyes saying everything. "Please, save my baby." The snowstorm had turned the world white, muffling every sound except the hum of Ryan's car engine. He was driving back from work, half lost in thought, when something caught his eye, a dark shape moving along the roadside. At first, he thought it was debris, but then he saw it move again, and heard a sound that made his stomach twist. A dog's cry, weak, broken, desperate. That he stopped the car immediately, stepping out into the biting cold. The wind howled through the trees as he called out, "Hey, are you okay?" A wounded German shepherd limped toward him, her fur matted with blood, her eyes wide with panic and pain. But instead of running away, she whimpered, looked back toward the woods, and cried again, louder this time. Something in her eyes begged him to follow. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then began trudging through the snow after her. She led him deep into the trees until she suddenly stopped beside a small mound of snow. There, half buried and trembling, was a tiny puppy, barely alive. Ryan's heart shattered. He dropped to his knees, wrapped the little one in his scarf, and whispered, "Don't worry. I'll save you both." Ryan's hands shook as he lifted the trembling puppy, his heart racing with panic. The little creature wasn't moving, its body cold and limp. "Come on, hang in there," he whispered, rubbing its tiny chest. Behind him, the mother dog let out a weak whine, dragging herself closer, leaving a faint trail of blood in the snow. Her paw rested gently on his boot, as if begging him not to leave her baby behind. He wrapped the pup inside his jacket, then carefully picked up the injured mother. She struggled at first, letting out a low growl of fear, but soon went quiet, her body collapsing against his arms. Ryan ran to his car, cranked the heater to full, and sped toward the nearest vet clinic, 30 miles away. Snow hammered the windshield, visibility dropping to almost nothing. He kept glancing down at the passenger seat, at the puppy wrapped in his scarf and the mother lying motionless beside it. "Just a little longer, please," he muttered. When he finally burst through the clinic doors, his voice cracked. "Please, help them." The vet and his assistants rushed over, taking both animals from his arms. As they disappeared into the emergency room, Ryan stood frozen in place, his breath shaky, his heart praying for a miracle. Ryan sat on a bench outside the treatment room, his hands clasped tightly, his clothes still soaked from the snow. Minutes felt like hours. Then, through the small glass window, he saw her, the wounded mother dog lying on a metal table, her sides rising and falling weakly beneath layers of bandages. Dr. Harris stepped out, removing his gloves. "She's lost a lot of blood," he said softly, "but she's strong." The puppy. His voice trailed off, glancing toward the incubator where the tiny pup lay surrounded by tubes. "He's fighting too, but barely." The mother was awake. She lifted her head, her gaze immediately locking on the incubator. Ignoring her pain, she tried to stand, stumbling off the table as the nurses rushed to hold her down. "She won't rest," one of them whispered. "She's trying to get to her baby." Ryan's eyes filled with tears as he watched her struggle. Even battered and bleeding, she didn't care about herself, only the fragile life she'd brought into the world. He whispered under his breath, voice trembling, "She's not just fighting to live. She's fighting to love." The hours dragged on, and exhaustion filled the clinic. The tiny puppy's heartbeat on the monitor grew fainter with each passing minute. Dr. Harris frowned deeply, whispering, "He's not responding. We're losing him." Ryan's chest tightened. He pressed his hands together, silently praying. The mother, still weak, lifted her head and let out a faint cry that echoed through the room, a sound so raw it silenced everyone. "She knows," murmured a nurse. "She can feel it." Dr. Harris hesitated for a moment, then made a bold decision. "Bring the puppy closer to her," he ordered. The team carefully removed the incubator door, and placed the tiny pup beside his mother's face. Her eyes softened immediately. Despite the pain, she licked his cold body with trembling movements, nuzzling him close. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the pup twitched. A faint squeak filled the air. The heart monitor beeped once. Then again, his chest began to rise and fall. Gasps filled the room. Dr. Harris smiled through disbelief. It's working. She brought him back. Ryan felt tears blur his vision as he knelt beside them. The mother's breathing slowed, her eyes now calm, her paw resting protectively over her pup'd eye. In that moment, everyone in the room understood. They weren't witnessing a medical recovery. They were witnessing the power of a mother's love bringing life back from the edge of death. Days passed, and the small clinic that once echoed with panic now brimmed with hope. The mother dog, now named Hope by the nurses, slowly regained her strength. Her wounds began to heal, and her eyes, once clouded with fear, now sparkled whenever her puppy whimpered nearby. The tiny pup, who had been moments from death, was named Miracle, because that's exactly what he was. Every morning, Ryan arrived with fresh blankets and food, sitting quietly beside their recovery pen. Hope would wag her tail the moment she saw him, pressing her nose against his palm. Sometimes, she'd nudge Miracle toward him, as if saying, "You helped us. He's yours too." The story spread quickly through the town. Locals began visiting the clinic, bringing toys, treats, and donations. Someone uploaded a short video of Hope licking her revived puppy. It went viral overnight. Within days, thousands of comments poured in from around the world. People called them the Miracle Duo, a mother's love reborn, and proof that compassion still exists. Dr. Harris smiled one afternoon as he watched Ryan stroke Miracle's fur. "You saved them," he said softly. Ryan shook his head, smiling faintly. "No, she did." He looked over at Hope, lying peacefully with her puppy curled beside her. She never gave up, not even when the world did. For the first time in years, Ryan felt something he thought he'd lost: faith in love, in life, and in second chances. A few weeks later, the snow had melted, and the clinic's garden was filled with sunlight. Hope and Miracle were finally strong enough to leave. Ryan arrived early that morning, his heart pounding as he signed the final adoption papers. Dr. Harris smiled warmly. "You sure about this?" he asked. Ryan chuckled softly, glancing at the two dogs playing outside. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." When Hope saw him, she bounded toward him, no longer the limping, broken stray he'd met that freezing night. She jumped into his arms, her tail wagging wildly. Miracle barked for the first time, a high, joyous sound that made everyone laugh. Ryan crouched down, scooping the little pup into his hands. "You did it, kiddo," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You both did." As they walked toward the car, Hope stopped and turned back toward the clinic, her eyes glimmering in the morning light. For a moment, she seemed to say goodbye, not to the building, but to the pain she'd left behind. Ryan opened the car door, and the two climbed in together, curling up beside him. As the engine started, he looked out toward the horizon and smiled. "You saved your baby that night," he murmured. "Now it's my turn to make sure you're never alone again." Sometimes, it's not the hero who saves the dog, it's the dog who saves the hero.